I've run 13:54 for 5k and have friends who have ran way quicker, 3 Olympians and 1 world finalist. So I sent them a message and used their replies to put together a list of some of our favourite 5k workouts to help you train smarter and improve your personal best. For each session, I'll give the full advanced version and also a beginner friendly version for people who are just starting out or don't feel quite ready to handle the volume yet. There's also one session in here that I've never seen anyone else do, but it's the one that gets me the most ready to race over the 5k. So whether you're trying to break 14 minutes for the first time in 3 years or going to your local park run for the first time, there's something in here for everyone, so let's get into it. A couple of important things before we actually get into the sessions. The first is that these should be used as part of a training week and shouldn't be your whole week. You have to be doing easy mileage to build up your fitness and also to help recover in between these hard days. I've been running consistently for 20 years and have got up as high as 135 miles a week, and still I'm only doing 2 of these hard days every week. So if you do want to pick 2 of these sessions, make sure you're spreading them out in the week, not doing them in back-to-back days. Something like Wednesday and Saturday would work really well here. The second thing is that you have to be doing a proper warm-up before any hard session. You should never be leaving the house or leaving work and going straight into running quickly. You will end up injured at some point if you keep doing this. So make sure you're doing at least 5 to 10 minutes of warming up before starting the actual session. This can be a 10-minute jog or a 5-minute walk, depending on your experience and fitness levels. It's just something to let your legs know that it's time to move, and some dynamic stretching on top of this light jog or walk also can work really well. However, these aren't a requirement like the actual movement is. So let's start off the list of 5k sessions with something that is definitely not a 5k session, but is very, very important. And that's some kind of long tempo. The example that I'm going to give here is a 10-mile treadmill tempo. Now, before you click off this video, this is the only time that I'm going to mention the treadmill, and I'm only going to talk about it for 30 seconds, starting now. So I used treadmill tempos a lot before my best 5Ks in 2022. I would just set the treadmill at a marathon type effort and lock in for 55 to 65 minutes. Now, there's probably very few people watching this video right now who should go and do a 10-mile treadmill tempo. And it's actually not something I even do anymore or prescribe to my athletes that I coach. But it worked wonders for me in 2022, so I just had to include it in here. You need to be aerobically fit to run a good 5k, and this comes from doing a lot of volume at a slower pace. But this can be achieved in many different ways, and the beginner sessions that I'm going to give are just broken up threshold sessions, which can be built up from something like 6 by 3 minutes at threshold with 90 seconds recovery, where you're running at a good solid effort that feels tough but is definitely manageable. I've always been told that threshold pace is the pace that you can maintain for 1 hour in a race, but this will depend a lot on the rep distance that you're doing. However, I think that targeting this pace will give you a good sort of gauge of how the effort should feel and what we're sort of going for here. Controlled, but not easy. So if we're starting out with 6 by 3 minutes at threshold, that's 18 minutes of total threshold work, and we're really looking to build this up to about 30 minutes of threshold. And we can use any time variation for this. One that my coach likes to give is 16 minutes, 8 minutes, 2 by 4 minutes. So that's 32 minutes of total volume. And all these threshold sessions, whether you're doing a 10-mile tempo or you're doing 5 by 6 minutes, it's just about getting out and building that aerobic engine that's going to help you so much come the 5k. So just as a note, every session that's mentioned from here is intended to be done on the track. This doesn't mean that you have to do them on the track, and road reps work really well, whether you're doing that as the timed equivalent. Say instead of doing 800 meter reps, you're doing 3.5 minute reps. Or if you're using your watch to get the measurement, then that's great. You're still working hard, you're still getting out and doing the work, And for a parkrun, this is actually more specific, but from my experience and from the experience of the guys whose sessions we'll get into later, we're racing on the track, so we will do these sessions on the track. But let's get into them. So a session that I absolutely love and that worked so well for me when I was training for 3Ks and 5Ks is 2 by 1500 meters. So this is definitely more of a 3K session. We're sort of coming at the 5K from the bottom end and running the reps at a pace that's going to make 5K pace feel a little bit easier. So the goal of this session is to run the 2 by 1500 at 3K race pace. So there's no building up into it. You have to make sure you've got a really good warm up for this one. This is basically a race pace simulator, and the best thing about this session is that you get 15 minutes recovery between reps. And you're probably thinking, well, we're only doing 3K of work at 3K pace with a massive recovery. Surely that's easy. Well, that's kind of not how it works. The best that I ever done this session was 4:03 and 4:02. I did this on the indoor track in Glasgow, just by myself. And a few weeks later, I ran 8:04 for 3K. So basically just putting the two of them together and going 1 second faster. So as well as this session being a great race pace simulator and a great fitness booster, it's also a really good race predictor. If you're like me and you race a bit better than you train because you're training on your own, you could probably add the two of these together and see what you're going to run in a 3K. And as I said, just running such long reps at a pace that's quicker than 5K pace is going to be great for when we actually come to racing 5Ks. The beginner session here is actually something that I also do when I'm training for 3Ks and 5Ks, and I'll just do it a little bit earlier than the 2 by 1500, and that's 3 by 1K with 6 minutes recovery. So again, we're targeting around that 3K pace for these, and my best attempt at this was 2:41, 2:39 and 2:39. Now I would expect, had I done this at the same time that I did the 2 by 1500s, that I would have been able to sneak an extra few seconds, but because it comes earlier in the block for me when I'm not quite as fit, I am running pretty much 3K pace. So I think that's what you should be targeting in the first rep. And then if after 6 minutes you feel great, ready to go again, run a little bit quicker and just try and hang on in that last one. For me, this is just a really great way to get like a race effort in without actually racing. I'm historically not the best in my first race, so just having one of these sessions where there's no pressure, nobody's watching you, you can just go out and smash some reps on your own. It really helps once that first race comes, and I feel like I've kind of already raced, so I'm just ready to go out and try and chase a PB. The final two sessions are very similar in terms of rep distance, but are so different in terms of what they actually offer that I had to include both. I would say that the first session is the one that I find most enjoyable out of all the sessions that I do, and the second one is the one that is most key to getting me into great 5K shape. But let's start with the one that I find the most fun, and that's 5 sets of 5 400s. So we're going to take 3 minutes between each set, and we're going to start running at 10K pace with 1 minute recovery between reps. So that's 5 400s with 1 minute recovery at 10K pace. And then as we progress through the sets, we're going to take an extra 15 seconds recovery. So the set recovery stays at 3 minutes, and the goal here is to get 2 seconds per 400 quicker in each set. If you aren't ready to run 25 laps of the track, which honestly, fair enough, then this session can also be done by cutting a few reps and cutting a few sets. So we'll do 4 sets of 4 400s, and we'll keep the set recovery at 3 minutes because I don't want you being at the track all day, but we'll extend the recovery within the sets. So we'll start at 90 seconds, then go to 1 minute 45 seconds on set 2, 2 minutes on set 3, and to make sure we're getting the pace where we want it to be, take 2.5 minutes between reps on the last set. Since we only have 4 sets here, we'll miss the 10k pace for the first set, and we'll just jump to 2 seconds per 400 quicker than 10k pace, so that we're still finishing up the last set around the same pace as you would if you were doing the full session. Hopefully that was well enough explained, and if it wasn't, I will link a Strava activity to when I actually did this session in the description of this video. But before we get into the session that I've found most beneficial for my 5k performance, I want to give an extra bonus, and that is strides. These aren't a session necessarily, but they're something that really helped me with that top end speed that I needed to run a fast 5k without spending a whole session doing really fast speed work. As an endurance athlete, I don't find that I get too much benefit from doing something like 5x300s with 3 minutes recovery. So in my whole training block up to my 5k PB in 2022, I would finish up 1 easy run per week at the track, and I would do 8x100 meters pretty much as fast as possible in spikes, and then a second easy run in the week. I would finish up at a hill, nothing major like 4% gradient, and I would do 8x10 seconds as fast as possible up the hill. So that was twice a week. Every week I was doing flat out speed work after my easy runs. And even now when I'm training for a marathon, I still do 8x8 second hill sprints once a week, every week. And I just find that this is a great way to keep in touch with that speed, but without the injury risk that would come with hard track strides, especially now that I'm not as young as I used to be. And I also find that I just recover really easily from these, and I can do a really good hard session the next day. So the session that can definitely take the most credit for getting me to run sub 14 for 5k, and the one that I said I've never seen anyone else do, is 16x350 meters with 50 meter jog recovery. The reps here are run around 5k pace, with the jogs being very, very slow, like pretty much walking pace, but as a jog. I used to know that I was in great shape when I could do all these reps under 60 seconds, but this kind of got blown out the water about 2 weeks before my 5k PB, when I averaged 56.8 for the 350s and 21 seconds for the 50 metres of jogging. This ended up being a 20:36 4 miles, considering how slow I'm going in this 50 metres. If my maths is correct, 21 seconds for 50 metres is outside 11-minute miling, which is a pace that I don't really run. I do my easy runs at like 7-minute miling, but trust me when I say that that pace is needed for this session. I done this and I knew that I was in amazing shape, because this session is just so 5k specific, because 20 seconds recovery, you're not really recovering, and if you can do 16x350 at 13:31 pace with 20 seconds recovery, you're probably going to run under 14 minutes when the 5k comes. I tell you these numbers to give you a guide of what you should be going for here. Anything too much quicker than 5k pace is going to be too quick, and any sort of jog that isn't a pure jog that's really slow is going to be too hard. The first time I done this session, I tried to do 12. I think I got to 5 or 6, and then it was just pure suffering for the rest of the session. And my dad actually made me finish up the 12 reps just as like a lesson, and it was hard. So if you're going to do this session, respect it and be patient, and just make sure that you're getting it done. If you're a beginner, don't try this. Just don't. We can get there at some point, but you're going to have to do some other things before you get there. And the beginner version of this session that I would suggest is 12x300 with 100 meter jog. And just target that similar sort of 5k pace that we were going for in the 350s, and keep the jogs really slow and really easy. 12x300 with a 100 meter jog is a session that I've seen a lot of people do, and they'll progress it by adding some reps or increasing the speed, but try some 350s, see how it goes. You might like it, you might not like it at all, but it'll work, I promise. Okay, let's see what the pros had to say for themselves. So we'll start with Vinny, because Vinny is the only one who hasn't made the Olympics yet. Vinny, or Baldvin Magnusson as he's sometimes known, is an Icelandic runner who holds national records in everything from the 1500 to the 10k. He's actually the only person who I messaged here who still focuses mainly on the 5k, and he has a personal best of 1320. So here's the reply that I got from Vinny. So we're going to do 6 by 800 with 2 minutes recovery, starting at 5k pace and finishing up at 3k pace. And we're going to follow that up with 3 by 400 with 60 seconds recovery at 1500 metre pace. There's a few interesting thoughts I have about this reply. The first is that those 400s just expose him for the 1500 metre type 5k guy that he is. I did 6 by 800 metres with a similar recovery back in February, and not only could I not have done 400 metres at the end, I just never even considered for a second that running faster than 5k pace should be followed up by running even faster. The second thing that's quite interesting about this reply is that he never gave an exact recovery between the last 800 and the first 400. I guess this means that he doesn't find it that important, but it's also something that I've seen quite a lot when training in America. They just kind of go when they're ready, and I know that Vinny spent quite a lot of time at university in the USA, so that's probably just this sort of rubbing off on him. However, I like an exact recovery, so let's call it 5 minutes between the last 800 and the first 400. The last thing that's interesting about this reply is the fact that he said you have to be doing endurance training. I didn't even tell him to say that. And Vinny is definitely the 1500 metre into 5k guy of the group. So the fact that he's saying you should be doing endurance training means that you should be definitely doing endurance training. Do your threshold, do your tempos, they help. A beginner version of this session would look something like 5 by 600 with 2.5 minutes recovery. I think this would be a great way to make sure you're able to hit that 5k pace into 3k pace. So if we do 5 by 600 with 2.5 minutes recovery, and then after the last one we take the same 5 minutes recovery and do 4 by 200 with 1 minute recovery at that sort of 1500 metre pace, I think that'll be a really good place to start for a beginner version of this session. Since we mentioned endurance training, I thought next we should go with the slowest 5k runner of the group, not including myself. So this is Phil Sessman, best known for his dogs Kip and Hailey, but also known for having a 2:08 marathon PB and running at the Paris Olympics for Great Britain. He's also seemingly able to outkick anyone in the last 100 metres of a race. So let's see what he had to say. Phil went for 2 by 1k with 90 seconds recovery at 10k pace, followed by 10 by 300 with 1 minute recovery at 3k pace, and finishing that up with 2 by 1k with 2 minutes recovery at 3k pace. So I'm going to be honest, I was too scared to ask Phil if those 1ks at the end should actually be at 5k pace, and fears that he would call me soft if I was wrong. But I'm personally going to just add a note here to say that with those 1ks at the end, just see what you have left. Don't force it and try and run 3k pace, because that will be really hard. If they're at 3k pace, amazing, you're probably better than I am. And if they end up being 5k pace, I'm pretty sure you've nailed the session anyway, and that's what they're supposed to be at. Again, for a beginner version of this session, I would just cut the reps a bit and extend the recoveries a bit. So we'll go for 2 by 800 with 2 minutes recovery at 10k pace, and then we'll move into 10 by 200 with 60 seconds recovery at 3k pace, and then at the end we'll go 2 by 600 with 2 minutes recovery, and we'll target 5k pace. Next up, another marathon runner, and this time Olympic 4th placer Emil. No offence to all the other guys, but I'm sure they'd agree with me when I say that Emil is the most dedicated athlete that I've ever come across. He's also pretty class at the marathon, as you probably gathered from the fact that he was 4th place at the Olympics. Although he isn't known for being a 5k guy, He's still got a personal best of 13:26 from 2022, and his love of running really shone through in his reply, where he gave some great insight. So let's start with the actual session. We're going to do 3 by 5 minutes at threshold with 1 minute recovery, and then we're going to go straight into either 10 by 1 minute or 20 by 30 seconds with equal recovery at 5k pace or faster. My favourite thing about this session is that he's went for something so different from the other three guys and given us a way to target the endurance side of training and also the faster 5k side of training within one session. He explains it way better than I ever could in the rest of his message, and since he's given us a road session here and made a point of targeting it to people who aren't maybe quite ready for the 5k specific work yet, I don't feel there's too much need for me to mess around with it, making beginner versions of it. However, if you are a beginner and you feel like this session is still too much for you, then you should definitely try taking that threshold and making it 3 by 3 minutes, then taking around 3 minutes before doing the faster reps, where we can max out at 8 minutes of total harder volume. So that's 8 by 1 minute with 1 minute recovery, or 16 by 30 seconds with 30 seconds recovery. Hopefully still targeting around the same pace, but maybe just starting a little slower than 5k pace and building into 5k pace. Also, if you do start to struggle here, don't be scared to bump up the recoveries. Say 90 seconds in between 1 minute reps and 45 seconds in between 30-second reps. Finally, we'll go to the former European indoor record holder over 5k, Mark Scott. Although Mark is the only one of the group who's ran under 13 minutes for 5k, he's also the only one of the group who's ever been knocked out in the heats in the Olympics. Mark spent a lot of time training with the Bowerman Track Club, and he's went for a session that I've heard him mention a lot from his Bowerman days. So it's 1600, 1200, 800, 400, 1600, all with 3 minutes recovery. Starting out the first 1600 at 5k pace and getting quicker as the reps get shorter, and then making sure that last 1600 is faster than the first 1600. On the complete opposite end to Emil, this is just a proper hard 5k specific session, and you're going to have to be ready for it. The thing I love most about this session is that last 1600 is just never going to let you feel at ease or feel confident that the session's going to get done. I done a similar session recently where I started at 2k and finished at 400, and when you've only got an 800 and a 400 left, you can feel like you've already done the session, but putting a fast last mile at the end will just completely stop you from ever feeling like that. And this is great race prep, because when you're racing a 5k, you don't feel confident that you're going to finish it off strong until you're pretty much across the line. And that's exactly how I expect this session to feel. A beginner version of this session would be 1k, 800, 600, 400, 1k, with the same 3 minutes recovery and the same pace targets of 5k pace and beyond. This still gives you a really good almost 4k of work at hopefully an average pace of quicker than 5k pace, while still maintaining the lingering feeling of dread that will come with that long, hard last rep. So I hope that was helpful and that you learned something from it. I know that I certainly did. Thank you very much to Vinny, Phil, Emil and Mark for taking the time to reply and providing some great insights from their many years in the sport. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, and maybe if we hit 4,000 subscribers, one of them will let me film how long it takes them to drop me in one of these sessions. Until then, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time. Cheers!